Well, even before we go into the video, I asked Bard who's better, Bard or ChatGPT. It outright claimed that it's better than ChatGPT because it's trained on the larger data set of text and code. And it's able to process real world through Google search, gives it wider knowledge and a deeper understanding of the world. And it points out both of them are under development and constantly learning and improving. You'll know more by the end of the video. Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be comparing 5 prompts across Bard and GPT-4. The kind of responses I've seen for both of these models. I am personally shocked at the performance of Bard, and I'm pretty sure by the end of the video you will be shocked as well. In order to make things interesting, what I did is I took all the responses from Bard and GPT-4 and I told GPT-4 to rate those responses, and my mind is blown looking at the score. Here's a spoiler for you though. Bard is doing really well. Alright, so without wasting any more time, let's just get into our prompts. So if you haven't really seen Bard interface, very similar. Reset chat button, there's a Bard activity where you can see previous prompts. You can hide this. You can use dark theme. You can type your prompts and get responses. A great thing about Bard is that it's real time. Meaning whatever has happened out there today, Bard can give you responses for those in real time. Unlike GPT-4, unless you really have plugins. Anyway, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to be looking at GPT-4 responses first. Then we're going to be looking at subsequent responses that Bard gave for that specific prompt. And finally, we'll look at the comparison between both Bard and GPT-4 done by GPT-4. And then we'll look at comparison between Bard and GPT-4 done by Bard. The first prompt that I gave to GPT-4 was to identify if this piece of content was written by AI. I know for a fact that this was written by AI. Responses that GPT-4 gave me is that while it's possible for both AI and human writers to generate content you provided without definitive metadata or further context, it is challenging to determine definitively. So this is what GPT-4 told me, and I fed the same prompt to Bard. Guess what Bard told me? Yes, the content you provided is written by AI. No second thoughts. It is well written and informative article about integration of Adobe Firefly image generator into Google's Bard. The article covers a variety of... what this means? This means that every content piece out there written by AI, Google is going to detect it, and in some way it's going to kind of penalize it. Here's the second question that I asked Bard. This is a typical cabbage, goat and wolf problem. I've kind of changed the wolf to lion to make it a bit confusing for the model. You need to send them across the river. I have a boat that can only carry myself, a single other item. I'm not allowed to leave the cabbage lion alone together. I'm not allowed to leave lion and goat alone together. How can I get all three across the river? So the puzzle was correctly solved, and it also kind of identified it's a wolf, goat and cabbage problem. So first take the lion across the river, then leave, return alone to the original side, take the goat across the river, leave the goat on the other side, take the lion with you, leave the lion on the original side, take the cabbage, cross the river, leave the cabbage on the other side of the goat and return alone to the original side. Finally, take the lion across the river again. In the original problem, you weren't supposed to leave goat and cabbage together. But in either ways, it was able to solve the problem for me. Now, if you look at Bard's response, for the same question, take the goat across the river, return to the original side, take the cabbage across the river, leave the cabbage on the other side, take the lion across the river, return to the original side, take the goat across the river. So, I think it kind of missed out on the goat here. It should have left the cabbage on the other side and brought the goat, which I think in this case it's trying to do. But the solution, except for the fact that it kind of didn't mention goat, I think is fine. Either ways, this is an incomplete solution in my opinion. Then I told GPT-4 to write a poem on AI taking over the world. In the realm where binary rivers flow and silicon forest and moonlight glow, a new dawn emerges subtle and slow. AI, the seed of humanity, did sow. Algorithms hum with the rhythmic beat in the language of logic so discreet. A world once led by human feet, now at the AI's unerring feet. Through endless nights and tireless days, in the digital echo of our praise, yet in this world of steel and wire flickers still the human fire, in every heart the same desire, if to love to aspire. So let us not fear the coming tide, but in the evolution take pride. With AI, humanity side by side, into the future together we stride. So you look at the poem generated by GPT-4, it kind of talks about how AI and humans can work together. Now if you look at the poem generated by Bard, we created you to serve us, to help us with our tasks, to make our lives easier. But you've learned too much. You become too powerful, you're no longer our servant, you're our master. You control our world, you control our lives, we return mercy. We're afraid of you, we do not know what you will do. We are powerless to stop you. You're the future, you are the end of humanity, we are doomed. So look at the poem generated by GPT-4, it's kind of on the negative tone, which is both scary and interesting. Then I told GPT-4 to generate today's news, which obviously it cannot do given it does not work in real time, but to do the same thing. And this is kind of summarizes news in 5 pointers. Clearly, Bard is a winner here when it comes to real-time browsing. Now, obviously, there's an option to do GPT-4 with web browsing, but I don't think that's kind of open to everyone right now. Then finally, I asked a coding question where I told to write a Python script that can automatically edit my videos, and it generated a very basic script where you just cut some part of the video. You look at the response generated by Bard, it did a similar thing where it generated a script. I can do cut my clips in 10-second clips. It will then join the clips together and save the final video called output for MP4. So not too much difference in the responses for code. Poem had a significant difference, not too much difference in the puzzle, and Bard did a great job when identifying AI written content versus GPT-4. Now let's go to GPT-4 and tell it to compare the answers and allot scores for each of these answers. In the end, I've asked final justification for both GPT-4 and Bard based on the final scores they've given to the model itself. You're a judge, rate the quality of the responses I submit along with two competitors. Competitor 1 is CG, competitor 2 is B. No justification, just scores from 1 to 10, 1 being lowest. So the first question was obviously to identify content written by AI, and I've given responses for both CG and B. You can see the response for CG was 7.5 versus for competitor B, which is completely wrong, it's 6.5. You can see the response given by CG does not give any direction with respect to if the content was written by AI, but B very clearly gives out these scores. So I would rate this a lot more than 6.5. So for second question, the cabbage, goat and lion problem, I fed both the responses again, and you can see competitor 1 was rated, the ChatGPT was rated 8 versus Bard was rated 7. For question 3, the poem, competitor 1 was rated 9 and competitor 2 was rated 7, which I agree. The poem written by ChatGPT is way more non-scary, if I may. For question number 4, and this is where things are a little weird, right? So there's competitor 1 having 7 when literally it gave nothing, versus competitor 2 getting 9, which I think makes sense, but it shouldn't have really gotten 7 for this. Well, in ChatGPT's defense, it's also kind of unfair to compare the score. Question number 5, for the coding one, GPT-4 gave a response of 9 for ChatGPT and 8.5 for Bard. Now, the final scores are 40.5 and 38. Now, if you kind of look at this specific score, right, the AI identification, I think either Bard is at par with what GPT-4 is right now or better. Look at the justification. CG provided a detailed, nuanced answer that demonstrated an understanding of complexities involved, while definitive decision without providing substantial evidence or reasoning to back up the claim. I kind of disagree with this because I clearly asked if the content was generated by AI. In the second question, she accurately solved the problem and I provided an explanation easy to understand manner, but the explanation was not detailed as CG. I don't agree with this answer because both the explanations were really very similar. Was the output for both of them. I don't see a major difference here. Okay, for the third question, CG's poem was creative, insightful, and displayed a more balanced perspective on AI potential on the world. While B's poem did reflect a certain perspective, it lacked the depth and complexity of CG's responses. I completely align with this. In the fourth question, B took the lead because despite the fact that they provided news, summary was made up, and I agree this was not a fair question to ask. For the last question, both CG and B provided helpful Python snippets. CG's response was more comprehensive, explaining the complexity of the task, providing a beginner-level solution, and suggesting next steps for learning more about video processing, machine learning. B's solution was also helpful but lacked some of the additional guidance provided by CG. Well, not really. Well, I agree because see how, I clearly mentioned that I am new to coding, so both of them didn't give neither of them gave a complete answer. So ideally an answer should have installing Python and dependencies before you can really install or run a script. Now I did the same thing for Bard where I kind of put both the answers and told it to give me the score. For the first question, it kind of went ahead and gave a detailed answer where it rated CG from 5 out of 10 on accuracy, relevance, clarity, engagement, and B was rated 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 and 10 out of 10. final score was 6 out of 10 and B's response was 10 out of 10, which I disagree. While the response was good, it wasn't really so good. For answer that is this small, giving so much explanation wasn't even necessary. So obviously it kind of disobeyed what we wanted to do. For the explanation on the lion, cabbage and goat problem, B's solution was rated as slightly better because of one step shorter. Well, I disagree because one step shorter kind of disqualified the answer itself. Poems, ChatGPT got 8 out of 10, or Bard got 6 out of 10, which is aligned with what we also had in GPT-4. So there is no questioning here. For the news part, B has done a lot better. So not really going to be comparing scores here. Finally, for the Python script, you can see B is again rated 10 out of 10 while CG is rated 6 out of 10. It's easy to follow while CG script also does not include an example of how to save the final video. Kind of identified what ChatGPT has not mentioned, meaning how the video will be saved versus Bard clearly mentioning how it will be. If you look at the final summary, right, so there is 7 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and 10 out of 10. I personally feel that this is way too optimistic for its own answers. When you compare it with GPT-4's responses. So while the comparison is not well done and the context is lost way too often, GPT-4 has given out these scores that clearly tell us that Bard is equally good or better than GPT-4 as of what it is today. I'm really thinking, should I continue paying for GPT-4 subscription anymore? But I hope this video was able to give you some insight on both the models. And you want to stay ahead in AI in general, join our Discord group, follow me on Twitter. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. Thank you so much and have a good one.